and to aggressively prosecute any and all crimes identified. These include possible violations of federal civil rights law, campaign finance laws, federal election law, securities law, and antitrust laws, the Hatch Act, and a host of other potential criminal, civil, regulatory, and constitutional offenses. To assist in these efforts, I am urging House Republicans to immediately send preservation letters, and we have to do this right now, to the Biden administration, the Biden campaign, and every Silicon Valley tech giant, ordering them not to destroy evidence of censorship. Third, upon my inauguration as president, I will ask Congress to send a bill to my desk revising Section 230 to get big online platforms out of censorship business. From now on, digital platforms should only qualify for immunity protection under Section 230 if they meet high standards of neutrality, transparency, fairness, and non-discrimination. We should require these platforms to increase their efforts to take down unlawful content such as child exploitation and promoting terrorism, while dramatically curtailing their power to arbitrarily restrict lawful speech. Fourth, we need to break up the entire toxic censorship industry that has arisen under the false guise of tackling so-called mis- and disinformation. The federal government should immediately stop funding all nonprofits and academic programs that support this authoritarian project. If any U.S. university is discovered to have engaged in censorship, Crooked Joe Biden, our disgraced president, has wasted trillions of taxpayer dollars in less than 3 years, causing uncontrolled inflation that is crushing working families. Reining in Biden's wasteful and unnecessary spending is vital to stopping inflation and rescuing our economy from ruin. But the pain of the spending cuts must be borne by the special interests in Washington bureaucrats, not by American families and American seniors in particular. For 200 years under our system of government, it was undisputed that the president had the constitutional power to stop unnecessary spending through what is known as impoundment. Very simply, this meant that if Congress provided more funding than was needed to run the government, the president could refuse to waste the extra funds and instead return the money to the general treasury and maybe even lower your taxes, although we did give you the biggest tax reduction in history and the biggest regulation reduction in history, two things I'm very proud of. And they still are there, although they're disappearing rapidly under Biden. Thomas Jefferson famously used this power, as did many other presidents, until it was wrongfully curtailed by the Impoundment Control Act of 1974. Not a very good act. This disaster of a law is clearly unconstitutional, a blatant violation of the separation of powers. When I return to the White House, I will do everything I can to challenge the Impoundment Control Act in court and, if necessary, get Congress to overturn it. We will overturn it. I will then use the president's long-recognized impoundment power to squeeze the bloated federal bureaucracy for massive savings. This will be in the form of tax reductions for you. This will help quickly to stop inflation and slash the deficit. To prepare for this eventuality, on day one, I will order every federal agency to begin identifying large chunks of their budgets that can be saved through efficiencies and waste reduction using impoundment. Of course, this will not include national defense, and unlike Ron DeSanctimonious, who doesn't really know what's happening, I will not lay a finger on Medicare or Social Security. He wants to destroy Social Security and basically obliterate Medicare. These are benefits for our seniors. We are not going to touch it. There are many other things we can do. We're not going to let Ron DeSantis do anything to hurt Medicare or Social Security. On the contrary, some of the funds we save through impoundment from other parts of the government can be used to strengthen Medicare and Social Security for years to come. Reasserting the president's historic impoundment authority will also restore critical negotiating leverage with Congress to keep spending under control. Very simple. We're going to keep spending under control. We had it done, and then COVID came in, and we had to do some things to help save our country. We did a great job, but we were starting to make lots of money. We were energy independent. We were going to be energy dominant. We were going to be taking in massive amounts of money from the liquid gold that we have under our feet more than any other nation. And we were going to reduce taxes and pay off debt. This is the only way we will ever return a balanced budget. Impoundment. Just as importantly, bringing back impoundment will give us a crucial tool with which to obliterate the deep state, drain the swamp, and starve the warmongers, these people that want wars all over the place, killing, killing, killing. They love killing. And the globalists out of our government. We're going to get the warmongers and the globalists out of our government. With impoundment, we can simply choke off the money. This policy is anti-inflation, anti-swamp, anti-globalist, and it's pro-growth, pro-taxpayer, pro-American, and pro-freedom. I alone can get that done. I'll get it done, and I'll make America great again. Thank you very much. Under crooked Joe Biden, the U.S. government has spent nearly $1 billion to house illegal aliens and foreign migrants in expensive luxury hotels, courtesy of you, the American taxpayer, and they want to spend billions and billions more. In many states, we're running out of hotel space because the rooms are all booked up with illegal aliens living in a very large way on the American taxpayer's dime. Meanwhile, we have 33,000 veterans in this country who are homeless and living very poorly, I might add, and it's a shame. They're living in filth and squalor on our streets. Nobody is doing a thing for them. We helped them a lot during my 4 years, and it's all been dropped. Everything we did for our veterans has been dropped. It's a disgrace. Joe Biden puts illegal aliens before homeless veterans, and we cannot let this happen any longer. The American veteran is one of our greats. These are great, great people. We have to take care of them. When I am reelected, this national scandal will end. On day one, I will sign an executive order to cut off Joe Biden's massive spigot of funding for shelter and transport of illegal aliens and redirect a portion of those savings, a very large portion, I might add, to provide shelter and treatment for homeless American veterans. I will make it a personal mission to totally eradicate veterans' homelessness in America by the end of next term. You'll see a big difference, just like you did at the VA, just like you did with, frankly, everything we touched. The border was the best border we've ever had. We were energy independent. We were soon going to be energy dominant. Our country was doing great. We had no inflation. We had the best economy in history. We're going to take care of our veterans. If you have served this nation in uniform, the Trump administration will never betray you as Joe Biden and the radical left Democrats have done. They have truly betrayed you. Anybody voting for a Democrat is very foolish, very, very foolish. We certainly will not be putting illegal alien lawbreakers up in ultimate luxury while American veterans lay shivering on the sidewalks below. Unlike Biden, our loyalty will not be to illegal aliens who have violated our borders and come into our country illegally. They've trampled our sovereignty. It will be to the brave men and women who enlisted their lives to defend our borders and to protect our sovereignty. Thank you very much. We're going to take care of our veterans. Joe Biden has run up record trade deficits, also known as losses, higher than any president in history by far. These gaping wounds are costing our country countless jobs and trillions of dollars in wealth. One of my top economic priorities will be to stem this bleeding and put American workers on a level playing field. It's about time. And I must say, I did it 3 years ago, and they were doing great, but that's been blown out the window by the Biden administration. But to that end, I will pass landmark legislation that will be known as the Trump Reciprocal Trade Act. If India, China, or any other country hits us with a 100 or 200% tariff on American-made goods, we will hit them with the same exact tariff. In other words, 100% is 100%. If they charge us, we charge them. An eye for an eye, a tariff for a tariff, same exact amount. One thing is going to happen. Probably they drop the tariff, but if they don't, that's okay. We'll take in plenty of money. Under the Trump Reciprocal Trade Act, other countries will have two choices. They will get rid of their tariffs on us, or they will pay us hundreds of billions of dollars, and the United States will make an absolute fortune. There will be no more unilateral economic surrender like we've done for many, many decades. This will especially help our great farmers in Iowa and other agricultural states, and it'll help our manufacturers all across the nation. We will be knocking down barriers to American farm products, American dairy products, steel, just about everything you can think of. From all around the world, they take advantage of us, but no more. We must have fairness and reciprocity. That's the word, reciprocity. They do it to us, we do it to them. This will be a key part of our strategy to return jobs and wealth to the United States and launch an economic boom that will lift up our middle class and eliminate our dependence on China and other countries. And it's something that has been waiting to happen for a long time. We have been the whipping post for everyone else. We have been a country that was disrespected on trade and frankly disrespected on just about everything. No more. The Trump Reciprocal Trade Act. Thank you. Our once great cities have become unlivable, unsanitary nightmares, surrendered to the homeless, the drug addicted, and the violent and dangerously deranged. We're making many suffer for the whims of a deeply unwell few, and they are unwell indeed. The homeless have no right to turn every park and sidewalk into a place for them to squat and do drugs. Americans should not have to step over piles of needles and waste as they walk down a street in a beautiful city, or at least once beautiful city, because they've changed so much over the last 10 years. Our first consideration should be the rights and safety of the hardworking, law-abiding citizens who make our society function. When I'm back in the White House, we will use every tool, lever, and authority to get the homeless off our streets. We want to take care of them, but they have to be off our streets. There is nothing compassionate about letting these individuals live in filth and squalor rather than getting them the help that they need. We need professionals to help them. For a small fraction of what we spend upon Ukraine, we could take care of every homeless veteran in America. Our veterans are being treated horribly. Likewise, with all of the money we will save by ending mass unskilled migration, we will have a huge dividend to address this crisis in our own country. Under my strategy, working with states, we will ban urban camping wherever possible. Violators of these bans will be arrested, but they will be given the option to accept treatment and services if they're willing to be rehabilitated. Many of them don't want that, but we'll give them the option. We will then open up large parcels of inexpensive land, bring in doctors, psychiatrists, social workers, and drug rehab specialists, and create tent cities where the homeless can be relocated and their problems identified. But we'll open up our cities again, make them livable and make them beautiful. For those who are just temporarily down on their luck, we will work to help them quickly reintegrate into a normal life. For those who have addictions, substance abuse, and common mental health problems, we will get them into treatment. And for those who are severely mentally ill and deeply disturbed, we will bring them back to mental institutions where they belong, with the goal of reintegrating them back into society once they are well enough to manage. It's a tough task, a very tough task. What's taken place on the streets, what's taken place with their taking so much drugs. But the fact is, we're going to try. This strategy will be far better and also far less expensive than spending vast sums of taxpayer money to house the homeless in luxury hotels without addressing their underlying issues. And they have so many of these underlying issues and needs. This is how I will end the scourge of homelessness and make our cities clean and safe and beautiful once again. We will do it. We will bring back America. Thank you. Crooked Joe Biden is running a nonstop conveyor belt importing illegal aliens from all over the world into our country, and the Biden Department of Homeland Security is abusing its so-called parole authority to give them more governmental benefits than many law-abiding citizens, including our vets. Our vets are being taken advantage of. Our citizens are being taken advantage of. It's very unfair, and it's not going to stand. Under this horrendous abuse of power, millions of illegals will be eligible for billions and billions of dollars in welfare benefits, courtesy of you, the American taxpayer. So not only is Crooked Joe surrendering your borders and your sovereignty, he is stealing your hard-earned money to redistribute it to people who have no business being in our country. They should be in their country. This is not sustainable by anybody, certainly not sustainable by us. The United States is trillions of dollars in debt, yet the radical left Democrats are illegally dispensing public benefits to illegals while they try to massively raise your taxes. The radical left communists hate you, and they hate our middle class. Under Biden's scheme, the benefits that will go to illegal aliens include food stamps, free health care, welfare checks, and a host of other programs, the likes of which you would not even believe. In addition, Biden is also giving illegal aliens work permits to take jobs away from American citizens. And then if they have children, not only do the children get automatic citizenship, but they unlock a trove of additional government benefits flowing to illegal immigrant households. In the meantime, our vets suffer and our citizens suffer. On day one of my new administration, we will shut down this travesty and defend the wealth of hardworking middle-class families. I will stop the outrageous abuse of parole authority. I will reinstate my action making illegals ineligible for public housing. We will terminate all work permits for illegal aliens, and I will demand that Congress send me a bill blocking any future president from abusing his power to distribute welfare benefits in this manner. It's all being paid for by the American taxpayer. Like automatic citizenship for children of illegal aliens, welfare is a gigantic magnet drawing people from all over the world. They want to come to the United States. They want to feast off the sweat and savings of the American taxpayer. It's not fair. It's not just. We're not going to let it happen. I will end it all immediately. Thank you. Joe Biden and the defund the police Democrats have turned our once great cities into cesspools of bloodshed and crime. There's never been anything like it. Here's my plan to restore law and order in our cities and throughout our country, frankly. First, because police forces have been gutted by Democrats' war on police, I will sign a record investment in hiring, retention, and training for police officers nationwide, so important. This bill will also increase vital liability protections for officers because the Democrats want to take those protections away from our police because we want them to do their jobs, and we want them to do their jobs right. You can't take their protections away if you're going to have them do their jobs properly. Second, to qualify for this new funding and all other Justice Department grants, I will insist that local jurisdictions return to proven common sense policing measures, such as stop and frisk. Very simple. You stop them and you frisk them. Strictly enforcing existing gun laws against convicted felons, cracking down on the open use of illegal drugs, and cooperating with ICE to get criminal aliens off our streets and get them out of our country. Third, we will go after the radical Marxist prosecutors who are abolishing cash bail, refusing to charge crimes, and surrendering our cities to violent criminals. They have surrendered like never before. I will direct the DOJ to open civil rights investigations into radical left prosecutors' offices, such as those in Chicago, LA, and San Francisco, to determine whether they have illegally engaged in race-based enforcement of the law. I will also work with Congress to give the victims of their Marxist policies the right to sue local officials for harm and suffering, and it has been great that they have caused. If your small business is pillaged because shoplifting goes unpunished, if you're brutally attacked by a violent felon released without bail or bond, then you will be entitled to massive damages. Fourth, I will order the Department of Justice, or some people call it the Department of Injustice right now, and Homeland Security dismantle every gang, street crew, and drug network in America. Every single one of them will be dismantled. We already know where these turf wars and drug dens are. We know who the people are. And we're going to charge them and charge the culprits with every crime that we can find. We're going to be fair, but we're going to be tough. We also need the death penalty for drug dealers. So important. And I'd add to that human traffickers, drug dealers and human traffickers. They get the death penalty. Watch it stop, and stop quickly. Fifth, in cities where there has been a complete breakdown of law and order, where the fundamental right of our citizens are being intolerably violated, I will not hesitate to send in federal assets, including the National Guard, until safety is restored. If Nancy Pelosi would have accepted our National Guard or our soldiers, you wouldn't have had January 6th. But she and the mayor of D.C. didn't do that. Sixth, we will end the leftist takeover of school discipline and juvenile justice. Many of these carjackers and criminals are 13, 14, and 15 years old. I will order the Education and Justice Departments to overhaul federal standards on disciplining minors, so when troubled youth are out in control, they're out on the streets and they're going wild, we will stop it. The consequences are swift, certain, and strong, and they will know that. Seventh, I will protect the right of self-defense everywhere it is under siege, and I will sign concealed carry reciprocity. Your Second Amendment does not end at the state line. In addition, I will, of course, fully secure the border, dramatically increase interior enforcement, and wage war on the cartels. We have never had a border so secure as it was just 2 years ago, and now our border is the worst anywhere in the world and possibly of all time. There's never been a country that allowed to happen what's happening in the United States right now, where millions of people are pouring across our borders. They come from mental institutions, they come from the prisons, they're all being let out so they can come into the United States. They're poisoning our country. We will also take back our streets from the homeless, the drug addicted, and the mentally ill. I will discuss those plans in much more detail very soon. That is how I will bring back public safety to America. I want to thank you. We're going to make America great again, and we're going to make America safe again. Thank you. As president, it was my honor to support America's homeschool families and to protect the God-given right of every parent to be the steward of their children's education. Since the China virus, America has seen an estimated 30% increase in homeschool enrollment. When I'm reelected, I will do everything I can to support parents who make the courageous choice of homeschool. Under the Trump tax cuts, we allowed families to use 529 education savings accounts to spend up to $10,000 a year tax-free on tuition for grades K through 12. This was a tremendous win for school choice, very important, school choice, remember that term. And yet that benefit did not apply to homeschoolers. So to support the growing homeschool movement, in my next term, I will immediately fight to allow homeschool parents the same incredible benefit, $10,000 a year per child, completely tax-free to spend on costs associated with homeschool education. I will also work to ensure that every homeschool family is entitled to full access to the benefits available to non-homeschool students, including participating in athletic programs, clubs, after-school activities, educational trips, and more. To every homeschool family, I will be your champion. Do not vote Democrat. They are looking to destroy you. If you don't mind my saying that, Joe Biden can't put two sentences together, and yet he's looking to destroy you. Do not vote Democrat. Do not vote for Crooked Joe. Vote for Honest Donald. Thank you very much. For many years, tuition costs at colleges and universities have been exploding, and I mean absolutely exploding, while academics have been obsessed with indoctrinating America's youth. The time has come to reclaim our once great educational institutions from the radical left, and we will do that. Our secret weapon will be the college accreditation system. It's called accreditation for a reason. The accreditors are supposed to ensure that schools are not ripping off students and taxpayers, but they have failed totally. When I return to the White House, I will fire the radical left accreditors that have allowed our colleges to become dominated by Marxist maniacs and lunatics. We will then accept applications for new accreditors who will impose real standards on colleges once again and once and for all. These standards will include defending the American tradition and Western civilization, protecting free speech, eliminating wasteful administrative positions that drive up costs incredibly, removing all Marxist diversity, equity, and inclusion bureaucrats, offering options for accelerated and low-cost degrees, providing meaningful job placement and career services, and implementing college entrance and exit exams to prove that students are actually learning and getting their money's worth. Furthermore, I will direct the Department of Justice to pursue federal civil rights cases against schools that continue to engage in racial discrimination and schools that persist in explicit, unlawful discrimination under the guise of equity will not only have their endowments taxed, but through budget reconciliation, I will advance a measure to have them fined up to the entire amount of their endowment. A portion of the seized funds will then be used as restitution for victims of these illegal and unjust policies that hurt our country so badly. Colleges have gotten hundreds of billions of dollars from hardworking taxpayers, and now we are going to get this anti-American insanity out of our institutions once and for all. We are going to have real education in America. Thank you. In a period of less than 1 week, Joe Biden accidentally admitted that we're sending cluster bombs to Ukraine because the United States is running out of ammunition. I don't know how that works, but that's what he said. Then he called up reserve forces to ship them to Europe, proving that we are running out of troops, and that's also a fact. We have very few people signing up to join our military. These actions reveal just what an insanely dangerous situation Biden and the demented warmongers have led us into. Less than 3 years ago, I'd fully rebuilt the United States military and steered America into such a strong global position that peace was breaking out all over the world. We had peace through strength. 29 months later, the arsenals are empty, the stockpiles are bare, The treasury is drained. The ranks are being hollowed out. Our country has been totally humiliated. And we have a corrupt, compromised president, crooked Joe Biden, who is dragging us into World War III. And that's what's happening on behalf of a nation that paid his family millions and millions of dollars in obvious bribes. All you have to do is take a look at how much China, how much Ukraine have paid the Biden family. It's a total disgrace and a very dangerous one. Under these circumstances, the notion that we would even consider admitting Ukraine into NATO at this time is completely unhinged. Joe Biden can't even walk up a flight of stairs on Air Force One, and he can't put two sentences together. The last thing that this incompetent administration should be doing is risking war with a nuclear-armed Russia or China or other countries. We have somebody that doesn't have a clue representing us. When I'm back in the White House on day one, we are returning to a foreign policy that puts America's interests first. America's chief interest in Eastern Europe is peace and stability. We want people to stop dying. This war should never have happened, but it is long past time to end the senseless death and destruction. The numbers are much worse than you're reading about or hearing about or than they're telling you. Many more people are dying than you have any idea, and certainly many more than they're willing to say. Then, as I work to again rebuild America's military strength and deterrence that Joe Biden so foolishly squandered, we need to take a long, hard look at defense procurement and our defense industrial base, because it's been withered down to nothing. Given all the money we spend on the Pentagon, it's unacceptable that we would ever run out of ammunition or be unable to quickly produce the weapons needed. I will provide record funding for our military, just as I did 4 great years. If you think about what we were able to do, 4 great years of rebuilding our military, and we rebuilt it bigger and better and stronger than ever before. And now look at what's happened. We have no ammunition, as told stupidly by our president to the world so that everybody could know it. But I will also insist that we get more for every dollar spent, because we're spending too much money foolishly and our prices are too high. In addition, I will ask Europe to reimburse us for the cost of rebuilding the stockpiles sent to Ukraine, which they should be doing now, but Joe Biden is too weak and too disrespected to even ask. The fact is that we've spent almost $200 billion in helping Ukraine, and Europe has spent just a tiny fraction of that amount. As Biden's call-up of reserve troops show, we also clearly need to address the embarrassing recruitment situation in the USA. Joe Biden's woke policies and political purges have repulsed many great patriots from serving. They don't want to serve in our military. Frankly, they disrespect our president. That's a big factor. I will restore the proud culture and honor traditions of America's armed forces, and there will be no Marxism allowed, no communism allowed, and we'll get rid of the fascists. Thank you very much. In recent decades, there has been an unexplained and alarming growth in the prevalence of chronic illnesses and health problems, especially in children. We've seen a stunning rise in autism, autoimmune disorders, obesity, infertility, serious allergies, and respiratory challenges. It's time to ask, what is going on? Is it the food that they eat, the environment that we live in, the overprescription of certain medications? Is it the toxins and chemicals that are present in our homes? Every year we spend hundreds of billions of dollars to treat these chronic problems rather than looking at what is causing them in the first place. Too often our public health establishment is too close to big pharma. They make a lot of money, big pharma, big corporations and other special interests, and does not want to ask the tough questions about what is happening to our children's health. If big pharma defrauds American patients and taxpayers or puts profits above people, they must be investigated and held accountable. When I'm back in the White House, I will establish a special presidential commission of independent minds who are not bought and paid for by Big Pharma, and I will charge them with investigating what is causing the decades-long increase in chronic illnesses. I understand Big Pharma, I believe, better than anybody else. I know where they're coming from. And then I will ask them to publish recommendations for how every American child can have a safe and healthy childhood. This is a conversation that is long overdue, and it's a conversation that American families deserve. American families must have this conversation, and they must have a leader, a president, who can do something about this problem. And I will do that. Thank you. Joe Biden has been a disaster for the economy. Between his massive tax hikes, his anti-energy crusade, and his trillions of dollars in wasteful spending, Biden caused the highest inflation in almost half a century. As a result, interest rates soared to crushing levels, and now we are seeing bank failures that nobody believed even possible just 2 years ago. Joe Biden is leading us toward a Great Depression. I've been saying it for a long time. There should be no bailouts, but we need to get this economy straightened out as fast as possible. We're headed down a very dangerous path. When I'm back in the White House, I will immediately unleash energy production, slash regulations like I did just 3 years ago, and repeal Biden's tax hikes to get inflation down as fast as possible, and it will go quickly, so that interest rates can get back under control. I built the greatest economy in the history of the world. In fact, I did it twice when you think about it, and now we will have to do it again. Thank you very much. The situation in Ukraine is very dangerous, explosive, and escalating by the day. Joe Biden's weakness and incompetence has brought us to the brink of nuclear war, and now Biden is doing what he said 10 months ago would lead to World War III. He is sending in American tanks. It's far past the time for all parties involved to pursue a peaceful end to the war in Ukraine before this already horrific catastrophe spirals out of control and ends up leading, indeed, to World War III. And this would be a war like no other war, because this would be a nuclear war. As I have said many times before, Russia's invasion of Ukraine would have never happened if I was in the White House. Not even thinkable, not even a possibility. We must end this ridiculous war and demand peace in Ukraine now before it gets worse. And believe it or not, it would be easy to do. It would be very easy to do. In recent weeks, Americans have been horrified to see students and faculty at Harvard and other once respected universities expressing support for the savages and jihadists who attacked Israel. We spend more money on higher education than any other country, and yet they're turning our students into communists and terrorists and sympathizers of many, many different dimensions. We can't let this happen. It's time to offer something dramatically different. Under the plan I'm announcing today, we will take the billions and billions of dollars that we will collect by taxing, fining, and suing excessively large private university endowments, and we will then use that money to endow a new institution called the American Academy. Its mission will be to make a truly world-class education available to every American, free of charge, and do it without adding a single dime to the federal debt. This institution will gather an entire universe of the highest quality educational content covering the full spectrum of human knowledge and skills, and make that material available to every American citizen online for free. Whether you want lectures or ancient histories or an introduction to financial accounting or training in a skilled trade, the goal will be to deliver it and get it done properly. Using study groups, mentors, industry partnerships, and the latest breakthrough in computing, this will be a truly top-tier education option for the people. It will be strictly non-political, and there will be no wokeness or jihadism allowed. None of that's going to be allowed. Most importantly, the American Academy will compete directly with the existing and very costly four-year university system by granting students degree credentials that the U.S. government and all federal contractors will henceforth recognize. The Academy will award the full and complete equivalent of a bachelor's degree. In addition, to help the 40 million Americans who have some college education but no degree, the American Academy will grant credit for past coursework at legacy institutions and give you the chance to complete your education at the American Academy for free and much more quickly than is now possible or available. This will be a revolution in higher education and will provide life-changing opportunities for tens of millions of our citizens. Enjoy it, learn from it, and thank you. Our public schools have been taken over by the radical left maniacs. Here is my plan to save American education, restore power to American parents. First, we will cut federal funding for any school or program pushing critical race theory, gender ideology, or other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content onto our children. We're not going to allow it to happen. Next, I will direct the Department of Justice and Education to open civil rights investigations into any school district that has engaged in race-based discrimination. That includes discrimination against Asian Americans. The Marxism being preached in our schools is also totally hostile to Judeo-Christian teachings, and in many ways it's resembling an established new religion. Can't let that happen. For this reason, my administration will aggressively pursue potential violations of the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause of the Constitution. That's very simple. Additionally, on day one, we will begin to find and remove the radical zealots and Marxists who have infiltrated the Federal Department of Education. And that also includes others, and you know who you are, because we're not going to allow anybody to hurt our children. Joe Biden has given these lunatics unchecked power. I will have them fired and escorted from the building, and I will tell Congress that any appropriations bill I sign must reaffirm the president's ability to remove defiant employees from the job. It's all about our children. I will veto the sinister effort to weaponize civics education. We will keep men out of women's sports, and we will create a new credentialing body that will be the gold standard anywhere in the world to certify teachers who embrace patriotic values, support our way of life, and understand that their job is not to indoctrinate children, but very simply to educate them. Finally, I will implement massive funding preferences and favorable treatment for all states and school districts that make the following historic reforms in education. 1, abolish teacher tenure for grades K through 12 so we can remove bad teachers and adopt merit pay to reward good teachers. We want great teachers in our schools. 2, drastically cut the bloated number of school administrators, including the costly, divisive, and unnecessary diversity, equity, and inclusion bureaucracy. 3, adopt a parental bill of rights that includes complete curriculum transparency and a form of universal school choice. And 4, implement the direct election of school principals by the parents. It's all about the parents for their children. More than anyone else, parents know what their children need. If any principal is not getting the job done, the parents should be able to vote to fire them and select someone who will. This will be the ultimate form of local control. Our country has, frankly, never had anything like it, or let's say for at least the last 50 years. As the saying goes, personnel is policy, and at the end of the day, if we have pink-haired communists teaching our kids, we have a major problem. When I'm president, we will put parents back in charge and give them the final say. We will get back to teaching reading, writing, and math, called arithmetic, and we will give our kids the high-quality pro-American education they deserve. We spend more per pupil than any nation in the world by double. We're going to keep spending the money, but we're now going to get our money's worth. We're at the end of every list on education, and yet we spend the most. We're going to change it around. We may spend the most, but we're going to be tops in education, no matter where you go, anywhere in the world. Thank you very much. For 3 decades before my election, drug overdose deaths increased every single year. Under my leadership, we took the drug and fentanyl crisis head on, and we achieved the first reduction in overdose deaths in more than 30 years. I also proudly signed the SUPPORT Act, the largest investment ever in combating the opioid epidemic. Sadly, under Joe Biden, our hard-won progress has been surrendered along with the surrender of our southern border. It's such a shame. Now fentanyl and other ultra-deadly poisons are pouring into our country unchecked, stealing more than 100,000 American lives every single year, and many people think that real number is 300,000 to 400,000. Joe Biden's record is one of death, destruction, and misery in communities all across our nation. When I'm back in the White House, I will take action on day one to end this horrific plague and save American lives. Joe Biden will never solve the drug overdose crisis because he is actively destroying our border. What he has done to our border, we had the safest border in the history of our country, and now we have the worst border probably anywhere in the world, including third world countries. That's why I have previously announced I will impose a full naval embargo on the drug cartels and deploy military assets to inflict maximum damage on cartel operations. I will insist on the full cooperation of neighboring governments to dismantle the trafficking and smuggling networks in our region, and I will ask Congress to ensure that drug dealers, kingpins, and human traffickers receive the death penalty. At the same time, I will direct federal law enforcement here in the United States to take down the gangs and organized street crime that distribute these deadly narcotics on a local level. They are killing our people. They are poisoning our beautiful children. I will permanently designate fentanyl as a federally controlled substance, and I will tell China that if they do not clamp down on the export of fentanyl's chemical precursors, they will pay a steep price. I had a deal worked out with President Xi. They weren't going to be sending any more, and they were going to impose the death penalty on those that made it in China. But with a rigged election, that ended. Attacking the supply of these deadly drugs will be just the beginning. We must also do more to end the scourge of addiction here at home. Among the most important steps we can take is to strengthen the pillars that give life, meaning, and hope for those struggling with addiction, particular work, faith, and family. We need work, faith, and family. My administration will support measures to make it easier for those suffering from addiction to seek treatment without losing their jobs. We will forge new public-private partnerships for companies willing to provide job opportunities and skills training for former addicts. We will expand federal support for faith-based counseling, treatment, and recovery programs, recognizing that we are going to need God's help to steer our country out of this crisis. Finally, we will ensure that if a parent, child, spouse, or other relative needs to take time to care for a loved one fighting to overcome addiction, they are more easily able to take advantage of the family leave program, so important. When I'm president, we will not rest until we have ended the drug addiction crisis in America. We will win. It will happen. We have to win, though, in 2024, because our country is going to hell. Thank you. Under crooked Joe Biden, there has been a catastrophic increase in shortages of essential medicines. Last year, new drug shortages were up by 30%, with 295 active drug shortages just by the end of 2022 alone. It's a mess. There's currently a shortage of at least 14 critical cancer drugs in the United States. They just can't get it. And every month of delay, cancer treatment increases the risk of death by at least 10%. It's unthinkable that this could be happening in the United States of America in 2023. It is truly unbelievable. We are becoming a third world country very rapidly. Between our open borders and our bad elections, we are third world. But even more dangerously, the top producer of critical medicines that we rely on in the United States is a place called China. China produces 95% of all ibuprofen, 91% of hydrocortisone, 70% of all Tylenol, and nearly half of all penicillin. Can you imagine that? This is not just a public health crisis, it's a national security crisis. As part of my plan to obtain total independence from China, we will phase in tariffs and import restrictions to bring back production of all essential medicines to the United States of America, where they belong. I signed an executive order to begin this process in 2020, but Biden has shamefully failed to follow through. He wants it ended. He wants to take care of China. This is a matter of tremendous urgency. American lives are on the line, and it will be one of my top priorities as president. It will also create countless new American jobs. Thank you. We have never been closer to World War III than we are today under Joe Biden. A global conflict between nuclear-armed powers would mean death and destruction on a scale unmatched in human history. It would be nuclear Armageddon. Nothing is more important than avoiding that nightmare. We will avoid it, but we need new leadership. Every day this proxy battle in Ukraine continues, we risk global war. We must be absolutely clear that our objective is to immediately have a total cessation of hostilities. All shooting has to stop. This is the central issue. We need peace without delay. In addition, there must also be a complete commitment to dismantling the entire globalist neocon establishment that is perpetually dragging us into endless wars, pretending to fight for freedom and democracy abroad, while they turn us into a third world country and a third world dictatorship right here at home. The State Department, the defense bureaucracy, the intelligence services, and all of the rest need to be completely overhauled and reconstituted to fire the deep staters and put America first. We have to put America first. Finally, we have to finish the process we began under my administration of fundamentally reevaluating NATO's purpose and NATO's mission. Our foreign policy establishment keeps trying to pull the world into conflict with a nuclear-armed Russia based on the lie that Russia represents our greatest threat. But the greatest threat to Western civilization today is not Russia. It's probably, more than anything else, ourselves and some of the horrible USA-hating people that represent us. It's the abolition of our national borders. It's the failure to police our own cities. It's the destruction of the rule of law from within. It's the collapse of the nuclear family and fertility rates like nobody can believe is happening. It's the Marxists who would have us become a godless nation worshiping at the altar of race and gender and environment. And it's the globalist class that has made us totally dependent on China and other foreign countries that basically hate us. These globalists want to squander all of America's strength, blood, and treasure, chasing monsters and phantoms overseas while keeping us distracted from the havoc they're creating right here at home. These forces are doing more damage to America than Russia and China could ever have dreamed. Evicting this sick and corrupt establishment is the monumental task for the next president, and I am the only one who can do it. I'm the only one that can get the job done. I know exactly what has to be done. What's happening to our auto workers is an absolute disgrace and an outrage beyond belief. Auto workers are getting totally ripped off by crooked Joe Biden and also their horrendous leadership, because these people are allowing our country to do these electric vehicles that very few people want. And it's a mandate. So you'll ultimately be forced to drive in a car that goes for an hour and then you have to have it recharged. I hope you don't want to go very far away. Biden has imposed the outlandish requirement that 67% of all new vehicles must be electric in less than 10 years. That means Michigan and places that make cars, you can forget about it. You better get your union working because you can forget about it. Those cars are all going to be made in China. According to the UAW president himself, one auto company CEO used the word brutality over 40 times in a single conversation to describe Joe Biden. I call him Crooked Joe because he's the most corrupt president in history. He's also the most incompetent. But Joe Biden's cruel and foolish electric vehicle mandate, that's how bad this policy is. Your union heads know it, but the union bosses don't want to do anything about it because they're not leaders. But you know who's voting for me? The people in the union. Yeah, the union heads and the Crooked Joe keep using the phrase fair transition. There's no fair transition. First of all, people don't want the electric car, and the ones that want it should get it. But we want to have all forms of transportation and all forms of motorization to describe this unnecessary forced transition to electric vehicles. But there's no such thing as fair transition that destroys over 100,000 auto manufacturing jobs. It'll be much more than that. Wastes tens of billions of dollars that should be going to the workers and makes new cars entirely unaffordable for the middle class. That's a transition to hell. You're going to hell, and your bosses are leading you right down the tubes. You shouldn't pay your fees. They get these big fees from all of their workers, and it doesn't matter how bad they are, they'll endorse a Democrat, even though the Democrat's selling you down the tubes. Both the UAW bosses and the big three auto executives should be screaming at the top of their lungs. They should be ashamed of themselves, demanding that Joe Biden cancel his brutal electric vehicle mandate before it destroys the entire U.S. auto sector. If the union bosses and the CEOs refuse to fight back against crooked Joe Biden by forcing him to repeal this disastrous electric car scheme, then you will know they're not pro-worker, they're not on your side, they've got some deals going for themselves. And I'm telling you, you shouldn't pay those dues. You should not pay your dues because they're selling you to hell. You're going to be going to hell. You're not going to have any jobs. All those cars are going to be made in China, every one of them. You can forget it, Michigan. You can forget it, South Carolina. You can forget it, everybody. All of those cars are going to be made in China. We sit on liquid gold and we're getting rid of combustion engines, and they sit on all of the other materials that you need for the batteries. They're going to make all those cars. We're not going to make any of them. So to every auto worker, I stand in total solidarity with you in your fight against Joe Biden's job-killing Green New Deal insanity. It's insanity. When I am your president, I will deliver higher wages for auto workers. I will protect your jobs. I will end Joe Biden's catastrophic electric vehicle mandate. And by the way, if you want an electric car, you're going to get it. But you're going to be able to get all other types of cars, types of vehicles that you want. And on day one, you're going to be back in business with me, and those factories are going to start opening up again. Remember, when I got elected, I told you all about this in the campaign. And when I got elected, hardly a car company built outside of this country. I stopped it. They didn't go to Mexico anymore. I said, if you go to Mexico, I'm putting a big tariff. You'll make a car, you can have a 25% tariff if you send that car back into the United States. I stopped it. Well, right now they're doing it again, worse than ever before. We lost 32% of our industry to Mexico prior to my getting there, and we lost almost nothing. In fact, we were taking back our industry, but now it's going again. I'll straighten it out. But you have to vote for Trump. You have to vote for Trump. You can't listen to these union guys that get paid a lot of money and they get wined and dined in Washington. They know that electric cars are no good in terms of our workers. So vote for Republicans, but vote for Trump. Because if we don't win this election, our country, not only in terms of auto workers, our country will go to hell. Thank you very much. Before stepping into the political arena to save our country, I spent my entire life building a truly great company. Over the years, I've employed thousands and thousands of people. I built towering skyscrapers standing tall above the greatest cities of the planet. And from New York to Miami, from Los Angeles to Chicago, from Ireland to Scotland, and from Dubai to Hawaii, all the way to the Las Vegas Strip, I have created magnificent properties in some of the most spectacular locations on earth. In short, I have achieved the American dream beyond all imagination. Most politicians only know how to kill jobs. I have actually created them, but by the thousands. While others use public office to enrich themselves, I left an amazing life behind to go and fight for the American people, and I'm glad I did it. It hasn't been easy, but I'm glad I did it. Sadly and pathetically, for the past 6 years, the radical Democrats and the fake news media have been trying to deceive the public about these simple facts. Now, in an outrageous abuse of power, the radical Democrat Congress illegally obtained and leaked my personal tax returns, which show only that I've had tremendous success. It's been an amazing period of time. The seizure of these confidential records was completely unconstitutional. There is no legitimate legislative purpose for their action. And if you look at what they've done, it's so sad for our country. It's nothing but another deranged political witch hunt, which has been going on from the day I came down the escalator in Trump Tower. Although these tax returns contain relatively little information and not information that almost anybody would understand, they're extremely complex. The radical Democrats' behavior is a shame upon the U.S. Congress. This precedent must now be applied to the corrupt Democrats themselves. The new Republican House should immediately obtain the financial records of Joe Biden and his entire criminal enterprise, because that's exactly what it is. Biden is a corrupt politician who spent years selling out America all over the world, including to communist China. Just take a look at his accounts, take a look at all of his homes, and take a look at what his son, Hunter, has contributed to the family. The American public deserves to know the truth. We should also get to the bottom line on how Biden, on a salary of a U.S. senator, was able to buy one mansion after another, all these different locations. When I'm president, we will expose the Washington cartel, and we will make America great again. Fentanyl, heroin, meth, and other lethal drugs are pouring across our wide-open border, stealing hundreds of thousands of beautiful American lives, and it's happening like never before in our history. Children are being left without parents, families are being ripped apart, communities are being decimated. Our neighbors and fellow citizens are having their entire worlds destroyed like nobody thought possible. Our country is being poisoned from within by the drugs and by all of the other crime that's taking place. The drug cartels are waging war in America. and it's now time for America to wage war on the cartels. In this war, Joe Biden has sided against the United States and with the cartels. They are making more money than they've ever made before, times 10. There's never been anything like it. They're major companies. They're bigger than even some of our biggest companies. Biden's open border policies are a deadly betrayal of our nation. When I am president, it will be the policy of the United States to take down the cartels, just as we took down ISIS and the ISIS caliphate, and just as, unlike the situation we're in today, we had a very strong border, the strongest border, in fact, in the history of our country, and drugs were at a low of 45 years. There's been nothing like what we did just 2 years ago. We will show no mercy on the cartels. Every day, drug traffickers are using the waters of our region to ship their lethal poisons to America, killing so many of our people and ruining families. In addition to restoring strong border security, I will deploy all necessary military assets, including the U.S. Navy, to impose the full naval embargo on the cartels. I did that before, and it worked. What we did was incredible. We will guarantee that the waters of the Western Hemisphere are not used to traffic illicit drugs to our country. Furthermore, I will order the Department of Defense to make appropriate use of special forces, cyber warfare, and other overt and covert actions to inflict maximum damage on cartel leadership, infrastructure, and operations. I will designate the major cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. We will sever their access to global financial systems. I will also work to forge an unprecedented partnership with neighboring governments in our region, just like I did in Mexico. And remember, in Mexico alone, an estimated 100,000 civilians have been tragically murdered or gone missing at the hands of these cartels. The Mexican government, run by a very fine man, the president, is really working hard, but it's not working out. These cartels are vicious and they're violent, and they have Mexico for now stymied. Well, we have to help Mexico, and we have to stymie the cartels. Either we will get the full cooperation of other governments to stop this menace, or we will expose every bribe, every kickback, every payoff, and every bit of corruption that is allowing the cartels to preserve their brutal reign, and it is indeed brutal. Finally, as I have said before, I will ask Congress to pass legislation ensuring that drug smugglers and human traffickers receive the death penalty. The drug cartels and their allies in the Biden administration have the blood of countless millions on their hands. Millions and millions of families and people are being destroyed. When I'm back in the White House, the drug kingpins and vicious traffickers will never sleep soundly again. We did it once, and we did it better than anybody else. There's never been a better border than we had just 2 years ago. It was strong, it was powerful, and it was respected all over the world. And now we're laughed at all over the world. And we're not going to let that happen much longer. We have to take over. We have to be tough. We have to be smart. We have to be fair. But if we don't do something immediately, our country is gone. I recently read an interesting headline in the paper that said, quote, "The Washington Compost," which is the Washington Post, "hit with Biden-era layoffs as subscriptions plummet," end of quote. If they'd cover the news fairly, accurately, with a passion for our country, this wouldn't be happening to the Washington Post. People don't want fake news. Thank you very much. Under Joe Biden, the world has become vastly more dangerous, and there is no greater danger than the deadly menace of nuclear weapons and hypersonic missiles. Hypersonic missiles move at many times the speed of sound and 6 times faster than current missiles. Armed with nuclear weapons, they could annihilate entire cities and even countries within minutes. And we cannot let this happen. If you take a look right now, the nuclear word is being mentioned all the time. This is a word that you're not allowed to use. It was never used during the Trump administration, but now other countries are using that word against us because they have no respect for our leadership. World War III would be a catastrophe unlike any other. This would make World War I and World War II like very small battles. The best way to ensure that such a conflict never happens is to be prepared with unmatched technology and unrivaled strength. To this end, when I'm Commander-in-Chief, which we did an awfully good job at rebuilding our military, we rebuilt the entire military. Once again, I will work with Congress and our great military leaders, not the ones you see on television. I don't consider them leaders. But we're going to work with them to build a state-of-the-art next-generation missile defense shield. Just as Israel is now protected by the Iron Dome, a dream once thought impossible, America must have an impenetrable dome to protect our people. We worked with Israel to develop that dome. They relied on us, not just them, they relied on us. We have technology that's unsurpassed, but our past leaders haven't really wanted to use it. I rebuilt our military at a level that nobody thought possible, but we have to now go that further step. We must be able to defend our homeland, our allies, and our military assets around the world from the threat of hypersonic missiles, no matter where they are launched from. Our adversaries must understand that they, not the United States, will be totally destroyed if they ever dared to launch missiles against our homeland. The Space Force, which was inaugurated under my leadership, will have a very vital role to play. It was such an important thing we did. The Democrats fought us all the way, but we got it passed. First time in 79 years, a new force. Just as I rebuilt our military, especially our nuclear capabilities, I will build the shield to defend America from missile attack. We will have a peace through strength, and that's what we had, and we had no wars during the Trump administration. We had no wars, remember that, because we were strong, the other side knew it, and they didn't want to play games, they didn't want to mess around. Thank you very much. Three years from now, the United States will celebrate the biggest and most important milestone in our country's history. 250 years of American independence. What a great country, and we have to keep it that way. But that's why, as a nation, we should be preparing for a most spectacular birthday party. We want to make it the best of all time. Here is my plan to give America's founding in 1776 the incredible anniversary it truly deserves. On day one, I will convene a White House task force called Salute to America 250. It will be responsible for coordinating with state and local governments to ensure not just one day of celebration, but an entire year of festivities across the nation, starting on Memorial Day 2025 and continuing through July 4th, 2026. Second, I will work with all 50 governors, Republican and Democrat alike, to create the Great American State Fair, a unique one-year exhibition featuring pavilions from all 50 states. It'll be something. The Great American State Fair will showcase the glory of every state in the Union, promote pride in our history, and put forth innovative visions for America's future. My hope is that the amazing people of Iowa will work with my administration to open up the legendary Iowa State Fairgrounds to host the Great American State Fair and welcome millions and millions of visitors from around the world to the heartland of America for this special one-time festival. Together we will build it and they will come. Third, alongside the Great American State Fair, we will host major sporting contests for high school athletes. These are great athletes, wonderful athletes from fantastic high schools all around the country. These Patriot Games will allow young Americans from every state to show off the best of American skills, sportsmanship, and competitive spirit. Fourth, I will sign an executive order to bring back our National Garden of American Heroes, which we want to build very badly, commission artists for the first 100 statues to populate this new statuary park honoring the greatest Americans of all time. Fifth, as president, I will invite the leaders and citizens of nations around the world to visit the United States in honor of our 250th anniversary. It's going to be great. America's tourist industry should get ready because we're going to have a lot of people coming. It will be a record year. And finally, and most importantly, I will ask America's great religious communities to pray for our nation and our people as we prepare for this momentous occasion. From the very beginning, America has been a country sustained and strengthened by prayer and by our communities of faith. As we chart a course toward the next 250 years, let us come together and rededicate ourselves as one nation under God. Thank you. Just a few years ago, I handed Joe Biden the fastest economic recovery in recorded history. But as soon as he came into office, he quickly blew it all up. It was a shame, so sad to watch. I knew it was happening, I could see it, and so could others. Biden and the radical Democrat Congress single-handedly created the highest inflation in decades. They spent trillions of dollars, waged war on American energy, and pursued the socialist joke known as the Green New Deal, an absolute disaster for our country. Now the inflation and high interest rates that Joe Biden caused have resulted in the Biden banking crisis, a disaster of historic proportions. We are seeing bank failures left and right. Biden and his enablers in Congress are directly responsible for creating this economic catastrophe. And with Joe Biden at the wheel, it will only get worse. That's what's happening in almost every single sector. America needs a president who knows how to handle the economy. Under my leadership, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. In fact, we really did it twice. Now we will do it a third time, and this time it'll stay. I will unleash American energy to get prices down immediately. I will stop the Biden inflation nightmare, and that will go very quickly. I will reverse the Biden tax hikes and regulation hikes and return to a pro-jobs, pro-growth, pro-worker policy that puts America first. Together, we will save our economy from destruction. November 5th, 2024 cannot come fast enough. Thank you. Past generations of Americans pursued big dreams and daring projects that once seemed absolutely impossible. They pushed across an unsettled continent and built new cities in the wild frontier. They transformed American life with the interstate highway system. Magnificent it was. And they launched a vast network of satellites into orbit all around the earth. But today, our country has lost its boldness. Under my leadership, we will get it back in a very big way. If you look at just 3 years ago, what we were doing was unthinkable. How good it was, how great it was for our country. Our objective will be a quantum leap in the American standard of living. That's what will happen. Here are just a few of the ways we can do it. Almost 1/3 of the land mass of the United States is owned by the federal government, with just a very, very small portion of that land, just a fraction, 1/2 of 1%. Would you believe that? We should hold a contest to charter up to 10 new cities and award them to the best proposals for development. In other words, we'll actually build new cities in our country again. These freedom cities will reopen the frontier, reignite American imagination, and give hundreds of thousands of young people and other people, all hardworking families, a new shot at home ownership and, in fact, the American dream. Another big opportunity is in transportation. Dozens of major companies in the United States and China are racing to develop vertical takeoff and landing vehicles for families and individuals. Just as the United States led the automotive revolution in the last century, I want to ensure that America, not China, leads this revolution in air mobility. These breakthroughs can transform commerce, bring a giant infusion of wealth into rural America, and connect families and our country in new ways. Likewise, through our Strategic National Manufacturing Initiative, which is going to be very big and very, very successful, we will turn forgotten communities into hives of industry, producing the goods we will no longer import from China. We will also have a major initiative on lowering the cost of living with a special focus on lowering the cost of a new car and lowering the cost to build a single-family home. And they will be beautiful homes. And I will ask Congress to support baby bonuses for young parents to help launch a new baby boom. Finally, I'll challenge the governors of all 50 states to join me in a great modernization and beautification campaign, getting rid of ugly buildings, refurbishing our parks and our public spaces, making cities and towns more livable, ensuring a pristine environment, and building towering monuments to our true American heroes. Very importantly, I will also make sure all of these new places are safe. We love and cherish our police. They will do the job the way they have to. It is time to start talking about greatness for our country again. I will dramatically increase living standards and build a future that brings our country together through excitement, opportunity, and success. Thank you very much. Far more illegal immigrants have entered the United States in the last 2 years than at any time in American history, and by a massive margin. We've never seen anything like it. Our country is under invasion. Days ago, 16,000 illegal aliens were encountered crossing the border in a single 48-hour period. A colossal migrant caravan recently poured across the Rio Grande and into the streets of El Paso, Texas, and the people and the police didn't know what to do about it. It is truly a massive invasion. Any form of amnesty now would be a catastrophe. It rewards Joe Biden's lawlessness, and it rewards the criminal cartels, and it rewards everyone who has broken the laws of our nation, because they've never done anything to our country like they're doing right now. Our country is being poisoned. Remember, our border is not open because of insufficient resources or legal authorities. Our border is open because Joe Biden has ordered it to be open, and because Biden has broken the law and torn it into shreds. He has shredded our system, and he's destroying our country. Biden inherited a flawless deportation system that was working like never before. In our history, we never did so well on the border as we were doing just a short time ago under the Trump administration. Giving Biden more resources will simply translate to even more releases, because that's really what they have in mind. This has nothing to do with asylum. Everyone knows this is a pretext and this is a fraud. Anyone who pretends otherwise plays into the hands of Biden and the criminal cartels. This is about Biden's lawless and criminal misconduct. The most important reform needed right now is a total ban on Biden using taxpayer dollars to free illegal aliens, and criminal penalties for administrative non-compliance, which happens every single minute of every single day. China is buying up our country. while corrupt Democrats and rhino-type politicians in Washington have been spending trillions of dollars on the Green New Deal nonsense, foolish foreign wars, and providing lavish benefits to illegal aliens from all over the planet, China has been spending trillions of dollars to take over the crown jewels of the United States economy, and they are doing that. China is buying up our technology. They're buying up food supplies. They're buying up our farmland. They're buying up our minerals and natural resources. They're buying up our ports and shipping terminals. And with the help of a corrupt influence peddlers like the Biden crime family, China is even trying to buy up the pillars of the U.S. energy industry because, frankly, Biden and the group don't care about real energy. They only care about nonsense energy, energy that doesn't work, and it never will. While some are focused on China's purchases near power plants and military bases, the fact is we should be very concerned about all Chinese communist activity in the United States. As I have long said, economic security is national security. China does not allow American companies to take over their critical infrastructure, and America should not allow China to take over our critical infrastructure. I didn't allow it when I was president, and I won't allow it when we become president again. To protect our country, we need to enact aggressive new restrictions on Chinese ownership of any vital infrastructure in the United States, including energy, technology, telecommunications, farmland, natural resources, medical supplies, and other strategic national assets. We should stop all future Chinese purchases in these essential industries, and we should begin the process of forcing the Chinese to sell any current holdings that put our national security at risk. If we don't do this, the United States will be owned by China, which would make them very happy. When I'm president, I will ensure that America's future remains firmly in American hands, just as I did when I was president before. It'll happen again, and our country will be stronger than ever. Thank you. A major disaster is brewing. If I were president, the Russia-Ukraine war would never have happened, never in a million years. But even now, if I were president, I'd be able to negotiate an end to this horrible and rapidly escalating war within 24 hours. It can be done. You have to say the right things, not the wrong things. I think we helped lead Russia into that war by saying, well, if they took a small part of the country, that would be okay. Such a tragic waste of human life. When you look at all that's happening there, those cities are obliterated. First comes the tanks, and then come the nukes. Get this crazy war ended now. It can be done, and in fact, it's easy to get done. When I'm president, we will be a strong country again. People will never be playing these games like they've been doing to the United States of America. They don't respect us anymore. They respected us greatly 2.5 years ago. They don't respect us anymore. Thank you very much. Under no circumstances should Republicans vote to cut a single penny from Medicare or Social Security to help pay for Joe Biden's reckless spending spree, which is more reckless than anybody's ever done or had in the history of our country. Biden has blown out the federal budget, wasted trillions on left-wing lunacy and the ridiculous Green New Deal, which is a tremendous problem and embarrassment to us, and thrown open our treasury and our borders to migrants from all over the world. In fact, migrants that are coming from prisons and migrants that are coming from mental institutions are being dropped into the United States, and we do nothing about it. I had the safest border in the history of our country just 2 years ago, and now we have probably the worst border in the history of the world. I don't think any country has ever had anything like we have right now. While we absolutely need to stop Biden's out-of-control spending, the pain should be borne by Washington bureaucrats, not by hardworking American families and American seniors. The seniors are being absolutely destroyed in the last 2 years. Cut the hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars going to corrupt foreign countries. Cut the mass releases of illegal aliens that are depleting our social safety net and destroying our country. Cut the left-wing gender programs from our military. Cut the billions being spent on climate extremism. Cut waste, fraud, and abuse everywhere that we can find it, and there's plenty of it. But do not cut the benefits our seniors worked for and paid for their entire lives. Save Social Security. Don't destroy it. The Democrats are looking to destroy Social Security. We're not going to let them do it. Thank you very much. The United States spends more money on education than any other country in the world, and yet we get the worst outcomes. We're at the bottom of every list. In total, American society pours more than $1 trillion a year into public education systems. But instead of being at the top of the list, we are literally right smack, guess what? At the bottom. Rather than indoctrinating young people with inappropriate racial, sexual, and political material, which is what we're doing now, our schools must be totally refocused to prepare our children to succeed in the world of work and in life and the world of keeping our country strong so they can grow up to be happy, prosperous, and independent citizens. We owe our children great schools that lead to great jobs and leads to an even greater country that we're living in right now. Right now, we're living in a failing nation because of Joe Biden and these people running it. They're Marxists, they're communists. What they're doing to our country is incredible, but we'll take care of that for our children. Here are 10 key ideas that will power our movement for great schools. First, we will respect the right of parents to control the education of their children. Second, we will empower parents and local school board to hire and reward great principals and teachers, and also to fire the poor ones, the one whose performance is unsatisfactory. They will be fired. Like on The Apprentice, you're fired. Third, we will ensure our classrooms are focused not on political indoctrination, but on teaching the knowledge and skills needed to succeed. Reading, writing, math, science, arithmetic, and other truly useful subjects. Fourth, we will teach students to love their country, not to hate their country like they're taught right now. Fifth, we will support bringing back prayer to our schools. Sixth, we will achieve schools that are safe, secure, and drug-free, with immediate expulsion for any student who harms a teacher or another student. Seventh, we will give all parents the right to choose another school for their children if they want. It's called school choice. Eighth, we will ensure students have access to project-based learning experiences inside the classroom to help train them for meaningful work outside the classroom. Ninth, we will strive to give all students access to internships and work experiences that can set them on a path to their first job. They're going to be very, very successful. I want them to be more successful than Trump. Let them go out and be more successful. I will be the happiest person in the world. But we want our children to have a great life and be successful. And 10th, we will ensure that all schools provide excellent jobs and career counseling so that high school and college students can get a head start on jobs and careers best suited to their God-given talents. This is how we will ensure a great education for every American child. And one other thing I'll be doing very early in the administration is closing up the Department of Education in Washington, D.C., and sending all education and education work and needs back to the states. We want them to run the education of our children because they'll do a much better job of it. You can't do worse. We spend more money per pupil by 3 times than any other nation, and yet we're absolutely at the bottom. We're one of the worst. So you can't do worse. We're going to end education coming out of Washington, D.C. We're going to close it up, all those buildings all over the place, and you have people that in many cases hate our children. We're going to send it all back to the states. Thank you very much. I was thrilled to host a screening at Bedminster of the important new film, Sound of Freedom, about the power of faith in overcoming evil, and in particular, the evil of child trafficking. Big problem. We had it down to the lowest number in many years just 4 years ago, and now it's gone through the roof. Even though the fake news media has tried to ignore it, Sound of Freedom has been a national sensation and a colossal success at the box office, really big numbers. Everyone should see it. This is a very important film and very important movie, and it's a very important documentary all wrapped up in one. It's really about an issue that has to be discussed. Under my leadership, we did more than any administration in history to combat human trafficking and to end modern-day slavery. In one of my first acts in office, I signed an executive order targeting transnational criminal organizations that traffic and exploit innocent people. I signed the Frederick Douglass Trafficking Victims Prevention and Protection Reauthorization Act, authorizing $430 million to fight sex and labor trafficking. I signed legislation to crack down on foreign countries who are not meeting standards for eliminating trafficking, of which there are many. I also signed into law the Abolish Human Trafficking Act, which strengthened programs supporting survivors and provided more resources for ending modern slavery. We do have modern slavery, if you can believe it. Additionally, I created the first ever White House position focused solely on combating human trafficking. And perhaps most importantly, we created the most secure border in U.S. history by far, dealing a major blow to the cartels and traffickers. We built hundreds of miles of wall. We renovated hundreds of miles of wall. We never had anything like it. And then I got Mexico free of charge to give us 28,000 soldiers to protect us from people coming into our country illegally. When I am back in the White House, I will immediately end the Biden border nightmare that traffickers are using to exploit vulnerable women and children. We will fully secure the border. I will wage war on the cartels just as I destroyed the ISIS caliphate, 100% gone, 100% destroyed. They'll come back now because we have a weak administration. I will use Title 42 to end the child trafficking crisis by returning all trafficked children to their families in their home countries and without delay. And I will urge Congress to ensure that anyone caught trafficking children across our border receives the death penalty immediately, and that includes also for women, because women, as you know, are number one in trafficking. Children are actually number two. I want to thank Eduardo, Jim, Tim Ballard, and everyone else involved in this film for their incredible efforts and their great genius. Together we will end the scourge of human trafficking, and we will defend the dignity of human life. Thank you very much. Calling Russia a gas station with a bunch of nuclear weapons, or calling Putin, quote, authoritarian gas station attendant with some legacy of nuclear weapons from the old Soviet Union, is exactly the kind of simple-minded thinking that has produced decades of failed diplomacy and ultimately war. And where is that war going? Those such as Mitt Romney and Ron DeSantis, very much alike, who insist on arrogantly treating Russia as deeply inferior to the other nations of the world, with no history or culture or pride, are not only ignorant and foolish, but their attitude makes it impossible to negotiate peace, absolutely impossible. Under my administration, we were tough on Russia, tougher than any administration before, but we also demonstrated respect for Russia and the Russian people. We demonstrated understanding for Russian history and the fact that Russia lost over 20 million lives in World War II. They were fighting with us. This kind of neocon rhetoric mocking Russia's nuclear weapons, along with implying that Putin must be tried and presumably executed as a war criminal, only increases the chance of deadly nuclear escalation. Fundamentally, it shows a lack of depth, a lack of seriousness, and a lack of sophistication on the subtleties and complexities of foreign policy. You can't do certain things and end up with peace. This is not the time for an on-the-job training as we face the possibility of nuclear war. And our leaders, if you call them that, got us there. This is where we are. The word nuclear was never even mentioned during the Trump administration. Now it's being mentioned every hour of every day. We need a statesman and a peacemaker in the White House, not someone who recites mindless and recycled talking points to win the approval of the failed foreign policy